In a year where there were so many incredible games, none of them hooked me like Hades 2. It's not only the most fun I had in a game all year, but it also shows how sequels should be done. The changes Supergiant Games made are so clever and so well thought out that they fundamentally changed the game for the better. Combat has more depth and mastery, level design is more varied and fun, boss fights are more interesting and unique, and the story is more engaging with higher stakes than before. I didn't think it was possible to improve on something that was near perfect already, but somehow Supergiant did it. Hades 2 is an absolute masterclass in game design, and it could be the best roguelike ever made. But before we jump into this, let me know what your game of the year for 2025 was below. Was Expedition 33 a worthy winner at the Game Awards? Or did an underrated game create your best gaming moments in 2025? The first reason I loved Hades 2 was due to how much variety Supergiant packed into the game. In hindsight, we could argue that the levels in Hades 1 were a bit boxy, generally small square arenas that were similar to fight through. There were some levels that were larger, but the level design didn't vary that much, except for the claustrophobic dungeons right at the end. Well, in Hades 2, there are levels that are designed differently, that are more open and interesting. On the downward path towards Tartarus, the third location is the Fields of Mourning, which is like a mini open world section where we search for encounters to clear before moving on to the next area. It's always liberating when we get to the Mourning Fields, because we're not instantly thrown into an encounter like we are in other locations. We're given the freedom to run around and explore, picking up optional resources or upgrades if we want to. Plus, the end boss fight to the Mourning Fields always blows me away because of its scale. We fight the massive Cerberus, who has equally massive AoE attacks, as we balance attack and defense in this huge arena, running to safe ground when we need to. It's really cool. On the upward path, we had more variety too, especially in the city of Ephyra. When we get to the town square, we have to clear 6 locations to bring down the barrier, but the twist is, we choose the locations we visit. It's always a strategic moment, as we contemplate the map to pick our ideal set of boons or upgrades we want. Then when we're in a location, optional side buildings can open, adding even more variety. The fact we have 2 paths in Hades 2 compared to 1 in the first game is also incredible. I enjoyed both paths, but I actually think the upward path to Mount Olympus is better. I thought the more traditional Greek design was more interesting, as we're up on the surface rather than in the depths below. Minus the Mourning Fields, the path down to Tartarus is similar to Hades 1, whereas the path to Mount Olympus feels new. It's so good, the Mount Olympus path could have been Hades 3, but the fact all of this is within one game is mind-blowing. Having 2 paths means we have roughly twice the number of bosses in Hades 2, and this is another area where the game excels. The bosses in Hades 2 have unique movesets that force us to learn new skills to beat them, and if we're not careful, a boss can decimate us with insta-kills or high damage attacks. Kronos is a good example of this, as we can be wiped out during a second phase if we fail to get inside this tiny circle. Whenever this happens, we have to stop everything we're doing and sprint towards the circle, lining up Melanoi to make sure we're safe. One mistake means game over. Prometheus also has a memory test attack, where we remember his pattern and move to a safe area to avoid damage, whereas Strife's adamant rail can floor us if we're too slow to dodge. Strife's attack continues to double at certain points in the fight, making this encounter more and more intense as it goes on. But the best moment in a boss fight is against Hecate, who curses us and turns us into a defenseless animal. I mean, that is also so creative, and when I saw this happen for the first time, I just smiled. It's such a clever idea in a game full of clever ideas. Above all though, so much variety is created by the new weapons and obscene number of boons in the game. It creates a ton of builds for us to chase after, with so many combinations being viable in combat. It really does make each run unique, even more so than the first game. And this isn't even accounting for characters who turn up at random or the exceptional mini-bosses in each location. It's all phenomenal. Other changes are smaller, but their impact is huge, especially for the combat. The way Supergiant switched our cast to an AoE attack completely changes how we approach encounters. Combat before was attack focused, where we were this killing machine, darting around the arena and smashing enemies into walls, mostly with melee attacks. There were ranged weapons in Hades 1, but personally I didn't click with them like I did with the melee weapons. Hades 2 still has weapons that are melee focused, and they do function in this way, but overall combat is more tactical thanks to this cast, as it can be used for attack and defense. For melee weapons, we can use the cast to slow down a group of enemies on one side of the arena, giving us room to clear up a group on the other, or we'll use it to pile on attack damage as we charge in head first. But for ranged weapons, the cast is used to slow down enemies and keep them at bay as we deal damage from afar. The cast invites us to think about the enemy position far more than before. Now there's less focus on battering down enemies as quickly as possible, and more on managing the battlefield with cast. Or at least that's how I played the game. On top of this, we have charged attacks that give us something else to master in combat. We have to learn when's the best time to use a charged attack and how it fits into our weapon combo, all while managing our magicka. The best thing about the charge attacks though is how they link in with our new Hex ability. Because using our Magicka charges up our Hex, it encourages us to use these charged attacks rather than revert to the old playstyle from Hades 1. The Hex abilities are fully fleshed out and realised, as each Hex even has its own skill tree. It would have been so easy for these skill trees to give us minor boosts, which some perks do, but there's also perks in the tree that fundamentally change each Hex, making them even more powerful. The story is another reason Hades 2 is my 2025 Game of the Year, and it's one thing that surprised me. I didn't gel with the family drama in Hades 1, as there wasn't a central plot point other than Zagreus trying to escape. Don't get me wrong, the narrative was good, and I do enjoy family dramas elsewhere, but not every conversation in the first game had me glued to the screen. But in Hades 2, the narrative is more gripping. The stakes are higher as we're trying to take down Kronos. Learning more about the history of Kronos was never filler, as I wanted to learn about how he rose to power and how Melanoy fitted into everything. I realise this is essentially a family drama as well, by the way, but this time it feels like it ties into the central plot, rather than it being the central plot. Kronos as a villain also works well, as he's a constant threat throughout the game. He's not one of those villains that appears at the start of the game and then goes AWOL until the end. Kronos is constantly referenced by other gods, and he even turns up to taunt us, which was a great idea. He doesn't feel generic either, as he's not a huge monster with no motive. He's tall and skinny, and it's obvious he's intelligent. The way his voice warbles and distorts as he speaks is genuinely unsettling, just like the best villains out there.
No one achieves abilities as yours through force of will alone. Though you are no mere god, you are a witch.
I also appreciated how Supergiant created a mystery we have to solve, adding more layers to the story. When we eventually beat Kronos the first time around, we quickly discover he's not that easy to kill. Because he's a Titan of Time, he can restore himself after every battle, and we need to find a way to stop him regenerating and solve this mystery. After each run, we learn new information to help us take him down, which is a reward in itself, like we're gradually adding clues to a pinboard to crack the case. Ultimately, the gameplay is so good that it will propel us through the game, but thanks to this narrative with higher stakes, there's another reason to beat Hades 2 that for me personally wasn't there before. I know other people liked the narrative before, by the way, which is fine, but it just wasn't there for me, which is also fine. All in all, the amount of content in Hades 2 is seriously impressive, and the new additions and changes Supergiant made were undoubtedly the right decision. But what's most impressive is how Hades 2 tops the first game, as Hades 1 was already exceptional to begin with. That's what really blew me away, because I love the first game too. And although I was impressed by other games in 2025, I didn't click with them as much as Hades 2, and that's why it takes the crown for me. I'm surprised Hades 2 hasn't been part of the conversation as much as other games this year, and I think it might be because Supergiant are a victim of their own success. Because Hades 1 was so good, it arguably makes the achievements of Hades 2 less impressive, for some people maybe. But I know if this game was released in a universe where Hades 1 didn't exist, we'd all be losing our minds right now with how great this game is. If you haven't played Hades 2 yet, buy it now. It's like 20 quid here in the UK, and in my opinion, that could be the best 20 quid you spend in 2026.